Happy I'm going home. Happy I'm going home. My family.
When you're weary, feeling small, when tears are in your eyes, I will dry them all. I'm on your side. Oh, when times get rough and friends just can't be found, like a bridge over troubled water, I will lay me down, like a bridge over troubled water, I will lay me down.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the webinar with Nate Boaz. Now, Nate Boaz is a veteran and author of the book Running Toward Fire. As most of you know, Nate is also the VP of People Strategy at Microsoft. Not only is Nate an accomplished business executive, but he is also a very inspirational and spiritual person who wants to make a difference in life. He cares deeply about veterans and children with special needs. He learned early on that there is a difference between doing a job and making an impact in life by helping others. He is in charge of the fastest growing veteran organization, Patrol Base Abate. One thing which a lot of people do not know about Nate is that he's a poet. He won the high school award for best poem, and you can find the poem to his father in his book, Running Toward Fire, available on Amazon. Nate, thank you so much for joining us today. It is a real honor to have you with us. Over to you now. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea, and thank you, C.O.I team. What an amazing opportunity to come and talk. Thank you for creating this tremendous platform to share my story. What an emotional video. I really appreciate you guys pulling that together. And thank you everyone who's made time to join me today. I hope you get something out of it. My big hope is that everyone walks away with something more than what they thought they would get coming into this. And so without further ado, I'm going to share just a few slides, nothing too dense. And my hope is to tell a few stories, lessons learned from my book and from my life. I'll take questions throughout, but we'll save plenty of time for questions at the end. So I will. All right. So Andrea talked about my talk is Find Your Fire, which is sort of a different twist on Joseph Campbell's Follow Your Bliss. And there is a double meaning to the fire. So I did, as you can see, on the screen, I wrote my book here. I'll hold it here so you can see it. That's available on Amazon in hardcover, softcover, and ebook. But when I was talking about running toward fire, there's the literal sense, right? In the military, we talk about, when you hear gunfire, are you willing to run toward it or freeze and run away? There's first responders literally running toward a fire or something dangerous. But in life, there's this sort of metaphor of fire in terms of what motivates you, what compels you, why do you jump out of the bed in the morning to do something? And I think that analogy from my military experience holds true to my business experience. So my memoir is not just for folks who served in the military or have an appreciation for that. I think they're hard-earned life lessons, and I'll get into some of those. I already mentioned Joseph Campbell a little bit. This is the quote that actually inspired me to finish writing the book. It was my guide for laying out the chapters of the book. Some of you may be familiar with Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey. Many of the Star Wars movies were based off of that type of narrative. But this is the quote, and I'll read it so that we can all take time to reflect on it. Furthermore, we have not even to risk the adventure alone, for the heroes of all time have gone before us. The labyrinth is thoroughly known. We have only to follow the thread of the hero path, and where we had thought to find an abomination, we shall find a god. Where we had thought to slay another, we shall slay ourselves. Where we had thought to travel outward, we shall come to the center of our own existence. And where we had thought to be alone, we shall be with all the world. It's a very, dense quote and a lot to unpack there. But if I leave you with any of my thoughts from it, what I took from it was the hero's journey, which is not just about, military or first responders. The narrative or journey of our own lives is as much about the inward journey as it is the outward journey, and the interplay between both. So you go out and try to do something in this world, but you need to be in touch with the deeper essence of who you are and why you're doing it. All right. So I'll quickly go through these lessons so that we have plenty of time for Q&A. I won't belabor them. Lesson number one is you're not alone on your hero's journey, whatever that journey may be. I love this iconic photo. It's actually a real photo from World War II, which I included on the front of my book. This is Private First Class Paul "Pop" Eisen in the 1940s, running on Okinawa into machine gun fire. He lived, fortunately. He had 4 kids at home at the time. The beauty of this photo, the surprise, right, is you're actually in the perspective of Private Bailey, the photographer who took the photo in the foxhole of this Marine, this young Marine running into danger. And so in these situations, there has to be the hero on the hero's journey, but there also has to be the photographer, the observer, the friend, the helper along the way. The second lesson, and you probably saw some of this in the video, I think too often in this world we don't accept the priceless inheritance of our ancestors. I was fortunate enough to have 2 grandfathers that served in World War II, that did heroic things. My namesake grandfather, William Boaz, he ran into a plane that caught on fire that they had crash landed and helped save people inside. My other grandfather, my maternal grandfather, flew missions in the Asian Pacific theater of operations into enemy territory. But the thing that I distilled from all of that, which I think is universal, is my grandpa Boaz, when I was about 11 or 12, just before he died, he gave me this little token. It was kind of worthless in terms of, the material value, but it was priceless in terms of the life lesson. And he said to me this quote, "I don't care what you do with your life, son, as long as you do something that serves something bigger than yourself. Do something that serves something bigger than yourself." And we all have, parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles and ancestors that I'm sure have imparted wisdom upon us. And are we open to accepting that wisdom? So the third thing is a peaceful warrior is still a warrior, right? I am, someone who knows the sort of horrible nature of war and combat and that experience, and I would not wish that on anyone. But I think the the ethos and the spirit a warrior can have transcends whether you're on the battlefield or not. Just really quickly on these photos, the two big photos are both of chaplains. The chaplain on the left, Chaplain Vince Capodanno, was actually awarded the highest medal in the United States, the Medal of Honor, serving with the Marines in Vietnam, where he was tragically killed. But he was reading last rites to people and providing them with medical care and spiritual care right before they were passing away, and was shot down in that instance, but had that warrior spirit. And then this photo on the right, you can't see me in the photo, but I am there. And this was in Iraq in 2003 after we had lost two Marines, and we actually paused and did a memorial service for these two Marines. And so it's just the point that neither of these men carried weapons, but they did carry the warrior spirit. The fourth lesson is look for the helpers. I stole that from Mr. Rogers, actually Mr. Rogers' mom. Mr. Rogers, before he passed away, he talked about the lesson that his mom told him, which is, whenever you watch the news, son, and you see dangerous things or bad things happening in the world, don't lose hope. Look for the helpers. And along my journey, my family were helpers, my friends were helpers, even the barber at the Naval Academy, who actually, I found out after having my hair cut by him for years, landed on Omaha Beach in Normandy on D-Day in the second wave, and actually advised on the movie Saving Private Ryan. And I didn't know that. And he cut hair there for close to 5 decades. And so you just never know, who your neighbors are or who the helpers are going to be, but always look for them, because they're going to provide you with guidance and help along the way. This one has gotten me through, this is kind of the dose of stoicism's gotten me through some of the toughest situations in my life. And Andrea and I were talking about this with the team before this call, like, there are disasters in this world, man-made and natural, right? There's major hurricanes, there's places in the world where there's suffering, there's places in the world where there's, wars and conflicts going on. And so what I've always tried to do is make the most of that situation, whether it's being, a pig in the mud at the Naval Academy, or enjoying that New Year's Day hike, with full combat gear, or, spending Christmas at the Kuwait-Iraq border, or my first day in Iraq, where I was responsible for 131 Iraqi prisoners, enemy prisoners. And it was a very intense experience to cross the line. I always try to have in my mind, this: do the best you can with what you have, where you are, and you can only control your attitude, if nothing else. I don't mean for this to be overtly religious, but I do think there is a spiritual aspect to life that we don't talk enough about at work and business and in the world, because we all have families, we all have things that we love and that we care for, and we all have our own belief systems. And these two photos are really important to me. On the left is the son of Major Nave, who was one of the guys that we were doing that memorial service for, who was tragically killed in Iraq. And I always think about his children and his family, and do they continue to have the moral and mental and physical and emotional and spiritual support that they need. He's a grown man now and successful in his life. And on the right is my team, just after we made it through the battle for Baghdad, and just you can see the seriousness and tiredness and and on our faces. But the thing that made me feel like that situation was one in which I could come out on the other side of, was the fact that I was connected with my higher power at the time, and that I was surrendering whatever happened to fate or faith, however you want to see it. The last one, and then there's one bonus one. So in the book, we tell the story of the rescue of the 7 American POWs in Samara, which my team was involved in, finding them and involved in the rescue. But in classic sort of fashion, we didn't have communications with higher command. We didn't have permission to go into this holy city of Samara. We didn't know if it was going to be an ambush. The rules of engagement said that we couldn't go into the city. But I always believe that, when you're in those situations, those defining moments, those challenging situations, that you default to your values and your character to inform the decisions, not the rules. And I'm not advocating that you always break the rules, but I am saying that, I think we all know those situations where whatever we're facing, there's the what the game or what the circumstances expect you to do, and then what your values tell you to do. And thank goodness we broke the rules and followed our values. And sort of this last bonus one, which I think resonates more and more with me as you become a more senior leader in organizations. There's, if you're in it for the traditional definition of success, of money and status and fame and fortune and all of that stuff, then you're probably never going to really truly be satisfied. But if you're in it for significance, right, in it for helping lift others up, helping organizations do more than they thought they could otherwise do, helping individual people realize their full potential or stretch their potential, and you can live with that, that quiet satisfaction of knowing that you're doing those things. These pictures depict that the POWs came home to a hero's welcome, met with the president and the first lady, there's all kinds of stuff, but we were back. This bottom photo, you can't even see him in the photo, but one of my Iraqi linguists is in with all these Iraqi boys and some girls as we were handing out soccer balls and candy. And, that was the hero's welcome for us, right? Was being able to continue to help people in these communities, help them move forward, help them to heal, help them to be on the other side of the experiences that they had been through. And so that's the last thought I'll leave you with is just, if in your heart what you've done is good, then let that be enough. And I'll end the formal presentation there, and hopefully, have plenty of time to answer any and all questions about any of my experience previously or currently, or what I think about the future. I will just caveat that I have no crystal ball whatsoever.
Thank you so much, Nate. That was very insightful, very deep. I have the first question. When so many people are stressed out nowadays, lots of problems in the world, in corporations, and I feel I have been more of a coach through COVID than ever. How would you tell those people to find this inner strength?
I think this is applicable no matter what your belief system is, but I truly am trying to live my life day by day, very much by the serenity prayer. And I'm going to, butcher it a bit, but just, granting me or having the serenity to accept the things I can't change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Probably what I struggle with the most is that, inflated ego leads us to believe that we can change everything and control everything. But that notion of acceptance of, there always has been, there always will be, as far as we can tell, these things going on in the world. How do I not let them affect me, not take, consume my energy and emotions and time? And how do I put one foot in front of the next and continue to focus on the things that I can positively influence?
Okay, thank you so much. Now the question, life is full of essays and errors at all levels, personal, professional, spiritual. It's just part of the process of living. How have you handled failure throughout your life, and what lessons have you learned from it?
Yeah, I've definitely continue to be a major work in progress, right? If you stop, I think someone said this, it might have been Gandhi or something, if you stop learning, then you stop living. I've failed quite a bit in my life. I've had failed jobs, I've had failed marriages, I've had failed attempts at projects, and failed relationships. I think the one thing that's helped me the most, that I've started to do more of, is, many times we want to just block those things out and move on. And what I've found is that the unresolved or unexamined experience makes you more likely to repeat it. Right? And so, slowing down and saying, oh gosh, why did that happen? Not to place blame, but to understand, and what was my role in it, and what could I have done differently, and what does this mean? And some of those things are exactly, most of them are probably exactly what needed to happen. I'm not saying that that's an excuse for our behavior and missteps, but if we're learning from those situations, like I'll give you one real one where I lost my job, and I was literally walked out of the building, and it was a mutual parting of the ways, but it was not, friendly or well executed in any way. And I sat down after that for a long time. I took a long time before I went to my next job, and I realized that I had jumped into that just because of the thought of, how successful I could be if I made it work, versus was this what I really wanted to do at my core? And so, it's self-deception. I was delusional.
Yes,
And so I was like, I'm not going to make that mistake again, where I choose something just based on this, promise of success. I need to make sure that it's, in my heart, what I really, really want to do.
So you constantly examine yourself, it seems.
Yes, and so does my wife.
Examines
my
you.
therapist.
Very good. So the next question is, how tough was it to transition from military to a commercial job?
Yeah, I think on the surface, right, in the logical mental sense, it was quite easy, right? Like in the sense of, like, I work hard, I'm dependable, I'm going to learn, I'm going to adapt to any situation. Let's keep doing, that, and bring that intensity and that leadership experience to whatever job I'm doing. So that on the surface looks great, sounds great, and it's probably what most people do when they're transitioning. What I did not address at the time, have struggled with over the years, and have come back to and really learned from, is just this notion of like, do you let society and the organization you work for and the business world dictate how you measure success, or do you define it for yourself? Someone said to me once that we all have the same x-axis, plus or minus, right? Like whatever the life expectancy is, plus or minus, but you got to define your own y-axis. And I feel like I had a y-axis of sacrifice and selflessness and brotherly love and higher mission, not for self but for country or for whatever, for mission. And then I got hit smack into the face with the commercial world, where I had people telling me this is about profit and deadlines and enriching enriching this group of stakeholders, and that felt really empty. And so what I've been working on quite a bit over, the whole time, but mainly the last call it 5 to 10 years, is reconciling those two things, figuring out how to make meaning out of work, or do meaningful things with the work that I have the opportunity to do.
Excellent. Can you go deeper on your people leadership philosophies?
Yes. So I'll just throw this out because I love it. One of my favorite sort of people leadership movies, by the way, is Invictus, about Nelson Mandela and the Springbok rugby team. I happened to play rugby when I was in college, and I think Morgan Freeman and Matt Damon do an excellent job of framing the different types of leadership styles and great examples of leadership. There's two things that are, there's lots of things that I think about when I think about leadership, but the two things in my philosophy that I think have been consistent, that I always try to anchor back to. One, ductus exemplo, which is the motto of Marine Corps officers, which is lead by example. Don't ask others to do something that you wouldn't do yourself. But not only that, light the way for them, show them the way, right? And encourage them and be there with them, and so that is one thing. The second thing, some people have a problem with, especially in management and the business world, which is, and I think I'm stealing this from someone else, but leadership is basically figuring out the rate at which you can dissatisfy people to achieve a common goal, or leadership at its core is about getting people comfortable with being uncomfortable. And so when I think about leading versus managing, which I think are both very important skills and muscles to build, to me, leadership is getting people to go places that they didn't otherwise think was possible. And while they might not like it at the time, when they get there, they feel a sense of accomplishment they've never felt before. And so those are the two things I anchor back to. You got to be with the troops out in front, doing things by example. And leadership is not about comfort. In many ways, it's about encouraging people to lean into the discomfort.
In your current role, how do you revel in the corporate suckiness you or your colleagues may be confronted with?
It's a special brand of its own suckiness. I think if you guys will permit me to vent for a minute, and maybe this will resonate with some folks. I think the things that bother me the most, and I'm working on, right, are, anyone who says that's not my job, or that's, not in my swim lane, or, there's an analogy that a lot of military folks use, or it's used in Lean a lot, which is like, if you work in a company where someone walks by, think a manufacturing floor or whatever type of company it is, it could be an office, law office, and someone sees a piece of trash on the floor. And if their response is not to pick it up and be like, I'm going to wait for the janitor to come pick it up, you've got a problem with your culture, right? You have an entitlement culture, and, a not my problem, not my job culture. And that's one of the things I've struggled with the most, which sucks, is that I think we've allowed that in many organizations to take hold, this entitlement culture kind of thing. And then it bleeds over into this sort of like notion of, I don't want to work hard, or, quiet quitting, or any of those things where people are just going through the motions. I mean, I try to put myself in the shoes of people who are doing that to try to empathize, and I can't seem to muster any empathy for that, because I'm like, how miserable would that be if work was just going through the motions for you? And it's not just, people tend to blame that on younger generations. I will tell you, I've seen numerous organizations I've consulted to, and many that I've been a part of, where it's actually some of the most senior, tenured, I'm sorry, older in some regards, I would include myself in that, folks who are in this sort of rest, invest, sleepy in success, mentality, as opposed to, good can be the enemy of excellent. And don't you want to be, world class, truly world class, or don't you want to continuously improve? If you made it to the moon, don't you want to go to Mars now? Like, and I feel like folks who don't want to, lean into that fear are missing out on the exhilaration and the, excitement that comes, with setting your sights on something that's worthwhile, but also challenges you to rise to the occasion. So yeah, I know that didn't really say how I revel in that. It's more that I rebel against that in the corporate world. But yeah, that's those are the things that I look to try to squash in most organizations.
The next question is, what did it do to you when it came out that the reason for the Iraq invasion was made up? I am not judging the reasons, but how did this debate affect you?
Yeah, it was tough. I tried, I would be lying to say that it didn't affect me, or doesn't affect me to this day. I think most of these things are, and I'm not making an excuse for intelligence failures, or how people used or misused information. Somebody asked me about it at one point, and I said, like, there were 21 different reasons that were given in the mission order in the military of why we were going to cross the line of departure and go in. Everything from Saddam's invasion of Kuwait, the genocide he'd committed against the Kurds and the Shia Muslims in his country, the violations of the UN resolutions 1441, including maintaining long-range ballistic missiles that could hit Israel and other allies in the Middle East, violations of the no-fly zone, and so on and so on and so on. And I say all of that not to say, and therefore I feel like it was justified because I wasn't a politician making, the decision or voting on it. But more that I think we've lost the art of complex debate, and this notion of, these things can never be summed up in a meme or a tagline or a soundbite. If we wanted to have a real discussion about that decision, then I think we got to consider all these factors. And I kind of feel that way about most of the things that are going on in the world today. People try to sum them up in very black and white binary ways when almost none of them, fit neatly into that box.
Excellent. So the next question, in a time where companies are striving to think out of the box and stand out in such a competitive market, how do you encourage creativity in your team?
Yeah. I think there's this notion in problem solving and the mentality that most of us have, which is, define the problem, analyze the root cause, recommend solutions, right? And that's very linear, and that's very engineering-like. And that's a fine process, and that works for a lot of things. But most of the problems that we face today are what Ronald Heifetz and the folks that came up with adaptive leadership would call adaptive problems versus technical problems, or adaptive challenges versus technical challenges. And so with adaptive challenges, I think it's much more important to consider the human factors, but it's also to be truly innovative, you have to be divergent versus convergent. And so that first process I talked about, is very convergent, right? You're trying to narrow in on a single point of failure and a single answer versus saying, what do we know from other domains that could be helpful here, right? What pre-existing knowledge or information should we have that might help us, expand the data set that we have to consider, other options. And so I think McKinsey calls it diamond-shaped problem solving, where like the first half of the time you spend talking about an opportunity should be completely divergent, right? Like the first half of a diamond, and then the other half should be convergent, narrowing in on options. So let people go, far afield for a bit and be uncomfortable with that messiness, is what I would say.
Mm-hmm. Human interaction can get intense even within the highest performance teams. How do you handle conflict within your teams?
Yeah. So I used to teach quite a bit on, challenging conversations, difficult conversations, all of that stuff. And I try to, model it in my teams. There's this interesting, thing where you can code different people's statements. Basically, all things that are said can be bucketed as advocacy, inquiry, and I mean genuine inquiry, not rhetorical questions or accusatory questions, but like genuinely asking a question. So advocacy, inquiry, or summarizing, right? Repeating back and clarifying, did I hear what I heard? So if you just buy that for a moment, that all things can be put into those three buckets, and clearly I'm advocating that, then the failure modes that we most often encounter are advocacy versus advocacy. That happens a lot, and you can only get out of that, jujitsu or whatever martial art or thing you want to call it, by someone being the first to seek to understand before being understood. And that's hard to do, especially when you're, a type A, aggressive, go-getter that, is generally right most of the time. But what I try to do in my team is when someone's being loud or someone's being shut down or someone's being quiet, right? All of these deviations from the norm, I try to pause and say, hey, can we all just listen to, Mia for a minute? Mia seems to have had an idea, got cut off. I think we should really seek to understand what Mia wants to talk about, and I'll be the first one to admit that, I was being loud and, and cut her off kind of thing. So that's a way I sort of see conversations. The other thing is being able to be, it's also a Ronald Heifetz's adaptive leadership thing, but be on the balcony and in the dance at the same time. This whole notion of, you're the coach and a player, and can you observe yourself as an actor in this, play as it's going on, and then therefore see bigger picture things like that. I'll say the other failure mode, which kind of goes with this not my problem, not my job, resting, investing. It's just passive aggressivity, where you get false harmony, or you think you've got an agreement in the room, you've put out an idea, you feel like people have signed up for action and ownership, and then the minute the meeting disperses, everyone goes back to doing things exactly the way they were doing them before. That is often in the environments I'm in become more common than the, I'd like to see a little bit more of this, frankly, not physical, violence, but more, healthy debate and creative friction. And, I want to do it this way. No, I want to do it this way. Well, what can we learn from each other? Let's make it better together, right? Like, I'd like to see more of that. What I see more of is, yeah, that's great. We're going to do that. That sounds good. What was he talking about? That's insane. We're never doing that. Right. And, come on, people, we're all adults. And so that's the thing that I really struggle with, is how do we get people to speak up and be intellectually honest? And, perhaps we've gotten so afraid to do that because we think that someone will misinterpret it as disrespect or something else that it's not, versus this just notion of like, being able to call a spade. And, I think this is going to fail, and this is why I think it's going to fail. And I'm telling you that to help us do better, versus if I tell you guys this, I'm going to get in trouble. And so I just gotta, smile and, give happy hands that it's going to go well.
Mm-hmm. Now, another question. Thank you for your presentation, Nate. What did you learn about yourself as you were writing your book?
Ooh. Too much to cover in the next 12 minutes. I will say everyone has a book. Everyone has a story. Let's start with the book. Everyone has a story, and writing is highly therapeutic and costs much less than therapy, for those who know. It was actually my therapist who was encouraging me to work through certain situations. And what I learned was actually that writing and reflection is essential to sense making of, the human experience, right? The unexamined life is not well lived, kind of thing. And so I think creating the space for that is a huge gift, but one in which I was able to reconcile things. So like, I didn't talk about it, but there was a photo of my dad playing football, high school football, and he dodged the Vietnam draft. Now I'm at a place mature enough as an adult to realize that that's probably one of the reasons why I am here today, is because if my dad had gone and fought in Vietnam, he probably wouldn't have made it. Probabilistically, he wouldn't have made it or been the same father that I ended up having. But I was able to forgive him things that I wasn't able to forgive him for in my life, in my younger years, through the process of writing and reflecting on those experiences.
Mm-hmm. What do you think has been your proudest accomplishment?
I call it pre-kids and post-kids. The pre-kids was, the POW rescue, and then knowing that, like, Shoshana Johnson's daughter's in college now. She was 2 at the time. Dave Williams' kids are grown up. All of those folks have gone on to live, healthy and meaningful lives. And so, literally being able to make that difference in their lives and the lives of their families. Post kids, just I don't think there's anything more selfless than being a parent, and especially a parent of a kid with special needs. I have 3 kids, and one of my kids has some physical and mental and emotional disabilities. And my wife is a saint, but also both of us, have just poured ourselves into this child, and to see what he's been able to accomplish and become has been something that I'm really, really proud of.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. What are your sources of inspiration and mentorship?
Yeah, I read a lot. A lot of nonfiction and a lot of biographical stuff. I think somebody had asked, like, what people. It's kind of an interesting mix, because I have, like, the sort of Martin Luther King's and Gandhi's and people, and Nelson Mandela's of the world, but I also have, like, the Teddy Roosevelt's and and folks like that that I look up to, and study their lives. And I don't take everything into my toolkit. I could probably do a better job on seeking mentorship. I will say that Andrea has been awesome in the last year or two, just being a interested and engaged coach and sounding board, right? I think all too often people think of executive search partners when I need to fill a role or when I need to find a job, versus how can we maintain a relationship where it's mutually beneficial, even if I'm not looking for a job, and she's not looking for roles that I might have open. And so I think that's been helpful to me. But yeah, I know it sounds like a simple thing, but never stop reading, and never stop learning. And I feel like every minute I'm not with my family or doing work, I'm listening to a podcast or reading a book or doing something that's helping me continue to grow.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And vice versa, you're an excellent coach too. The very last question I have, I just have to pick one here. What are your thoughts on working to live versus living to work?
I had quite a shock in some of my experiences in the last, call it 5 to 7 years, where I realized that I had taken work and internalized it as my identity. And I don't think that's a very healthy thing to do. I mean, I know different people have different views on that, but how often do you go to a dinner or a cocktail party or to an event or whatnot, and it's like, hi, I'm Nate, what's your name? Oh, what do you do? Right. And so the first thing we identify with is, what do we do, not who we are. And we're so much more than that, right? We're multitudes. I'm a father, and I'm a son, and I'm a brother, and I'm involved in nonprofits, and I like reading, and I like writing. I like writing poetry. And it's kind of this notion, they put it in the video and it may seem, cheesy, right? Like the poet warrior kind of cliche, but that was a real thing for me, was reclaiming the part of me that in high school wrote poetry that hadn't done it in 30 years, and to reclaim that and say, I'm not, hi, I'm Nate, I work for Microsoft, right? Or hi, I'm Nate, I'm a partner in a consulting firm. No, hi, I'm Nate, and I'm so much more than that. And so are you. And so I think, I don't want to say work's a necessary evil, because I don't think that's fair either, but we are not what we do. We are who we are, and what we do with it.
Thank you so much, Nate. That was very incredible and moving presentation, also very deep. I think we really have to re-examine our lives again. I'm sure everybody will, who has been participating. And to all who participate and listen in, thank you for joining us today. And for your information, our next webinar will take place beginning of next year by a highly successful business owner in Germany, someone who owns several large corporations. We will send you the information later this year. Nate, thank you so much. It has been such a pleasure. We're so grateful, and thank you.
Thank you and the team. Thank you very much.